Okay, now that we have talked about cell structure and cell function, the next thing that we're going to talk about is cell replication and division. So what limits are there to cell growth? Okay, why do these cells divide instead of just getting bigger and bigger and bigger? Okay, that's what we're kind of going to look at today. So there's two main reasons why cells divide rather than continuing to grow larger and larger. The first one is the larger a cell becomes, the more demands the cell places on its DNA. All right? If the cell grows too large, it will have trouble moving enough nutrients and waste across the cell membrane, right? Their diffusion is not the fastest process that there is, and so you would have to be constantly excreting and taking in materials in order to help the cell function. So problem number one, our DNA has its limits, okay? All of the information that a cell needs to function is stored in the DNA of the cell. So our DNA is packaged into chromosomes. A chromosome consists of one very long linear DNA molecule consisting of thousands of genes. Each gene is the instruction for making a particular protein that the cell needs. Right? The genes are like beads on, let's say, a bracelet. All right? So the whole thing, the whole chromosome would be a bracelet, and then the genes would be each bead on that bracelet. The cell is constantly making copies of these genes and sending the copies in the form of RNA out to the ribosomes, right? We learned about ribosomes in our last little mini unit of cell function. That was one of the organelles we learned about. So when the cell is small, the information stored in the cell's DNA is adequate to meet the needs of the cell. As the cell grows too large, there is an information crisis, so to speak, okay? The DNA cannot keep up with the demands of running a larger cell. You just can't get enough of it copied, turned into RNA, sent to the ribosomes. The ribosomes, they just can't keep up with that job. Problem number two is that a growing cell needs more and more and more food, all right? So a cell must take in a constant inflow of food, oxygen, and water across the cell membrane. And waste products must be crossing the membrane in order to leave this cell. So a larger cell will require much more food, oxygen, and water, and it will generate more waste. As a result, the cell grows, the volume of the cell increases much more rapidly than the surface area. So now there's not enough surface area for that exchange to be happening. The membrane surface area is not adequate enough to transport the large quantities of food and water in and waste products out. This is the really important fact that you need to know, okay? Is that when cells get too large, this membrane surface area is not adequate. Okay? That is the second reason cells cannot get too big, is the surface area is too small. Cell division. So cell division is the process by which cellular material is divided between two new daughter cells. Right? It kind of looks like this. You have this one parent cell which gets split into two daughter cells. All right? And the two daughter cells will be identical to each other and to the mother cell. That is extremely important to know in mitosis, okay, which is this process of cell division, is that they are identical to each other and the parent or mother cell. Must know that, okay? So each daughter is half the size of the parent cell, but immediately it begins growing, okay? A typical human cell has about 2 meters of DNA. That's a lot of DNA. I'm not even 2 meters tall, okay? Before the cell can divide, all of this DNA must be copied, and then the 2 copies separated so that each daughter cell ends up with a complete set of DNA. So you can see all the various stages of dividing in these little pictures, okay? Here's 2 new ones. Here's where it looks like you can tell it's kind of dividing up the DNA. That's what's really important, is that each daughter cell ends up with a complete set of DNA. So each species has a characteristic number of chromosomes in each cell nucleus. So for example, humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes for a total of 46. If you were a chicken, you might have more, mice have less, okay, so on and so forth. But for humans, we have 23 pairs, which is the same as 46 chromosomes. So during eukaryotic cell division, the chromosomes have very specific roles. So each cell must first copy its chromosomes before cell division occurs. That way, each daughter cell gets a complete copy of that information. And really, cell division occurs in 2 main stages. Mitosis, which is the division of the nucleus, and cytokinesis, which is the division of the cytoplasm. So here we're looking at a chromosome. Okay, there's like a real picture and then the animated picture and then a version of it in DNA. So the chromosomes are not visible except during cell division. At the beginning of cell division, the chromosomes condense into compact, visible structures that are easily seen with a microscope, which is pretty cool. Well, before cell division takes place, each chromosome is replicated or copied. So you can see the second arm is the copy of the chromosome. The replicated chromosome consisting of 2 sister chromatids. So here is one chromatid and here is the other chromatid. Okay, so this would be the copy. We could say this would be the original. Does that make sense? So here's our original. Now there's 2 copies. Okay, and then they're going to each go to the daughter cell. 1 copy in this daughter cell, 1 copy in that daughter cell. Now they look identical to the mother cell. So at the beginning of cell division, each chromosome consists of 2 identical sister chromatids. These chromatids are connected in an area called the centromere. So we can see the centromere is this little pinching right here. Not that that is super important, but you do need to know that there are 2 sister chromatids. So the cell cycle. It is a series of events that cells go through as they grow and divide. The cell cycle is the life of the cell from the time it is first formed from a dividing parent cell until its own division into 2 cells. During the cycle, first the cell grows, okay, to get bigger and bigger. It prepares for division, and then the cell divides to form 2 different daughter cells, okay? The cell cycle consists of 5 major phases. G1, which is first gap, S, which is synthesis, and G2, which is second gap, and mitosis. And you can see mitosis is really the smallest part of the cell cycle. Last but not least, we have cytokinesis, which is a tiny little part right after that, and then it goes right back in, the daughter cells start back in G1 to S to G2. So mitosis is the division of the nucleus, like we've said earlier, and cytokinesis is the division of the cytoplasm. The important thing to know is at the end of this, 2 new cells are produced. So before a cell can begin mitosis and actually divide, it has to do 2 things. First, it must form duplicates of its chromosomes. And second, it must produce a supply of organelles for the 2 daughter cells. These preparations occur during the G1, S, and G2 phases of the cell cycle. So if you really think about it, the G1 is like growing in size, okay? S is when it's going to be synthesizing those new chromosomes, and G2 is when it's growing more organelles, all to prepare for this mitosis and cytokinesis. These 3 phases, G1, S, and G2, are collectively known as interphase. So we could say this whole section, see how this blue arrow wraps all around? That whole thing is interphase. All right? And then we have our mitosis and cytokinesis. See? Interphase. So here's how the phases look. In G1 phase, the cell doubles in size. So you can think of G for growth. The enzymes, cytoplasmic organelles, and other molecules double in number. So it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. In the S phase, DNA replicates so that there's 2 copies of the DNA. In G2 phase, the cell assembles the special structures needed for cell division. Finally, when interphase is complete, the cell is ready to begin the process of cell division. So you definitely need to know these steps. G1 doubles in size, enzymes, cytoplasmic organelles, they double. S phase is replication of DNA, G2, structures for cell division, and then it's going to go into mitosis. So this is something you might want to remember for the test. So let's break down mitosis into its individual stages and see what's going on in each stage. I'm going to actually make this into a separate video. So hopefully this introduction so far of the cell cycle has given you a pretty good idea of how the cell prepares for cell division. So when you're ready, you may then start this next video where we're going to break down mitosis into its individual stages, and you can fill out your notes as you go. All right.